Here we go. We're gonna dial it up for the late season.
What's kind of the behaviors that you're starting to see in late season?
The most important thing I would say about your spot is how you're accessing it.
How the heck do you not freeze to death or just sit there miserable? What do you do to stay warm?
For $200, you can have what I would consider the ultimate blind.
Welcome back to the Ozark podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Veet, and I am joined, as always, by co-host of the show and my good buddy, Mr. Kyle Plunkett. How are you?
That's right. Doing good. I feel like we're getting back in the saddle a little bit. We've taken some holiday time off and trying to get in the deer woods and all the stuff, man. So I'm glad to have the headset back on.
It is good to be back, and man, the weather for deer hunting has improved significantly.
Yeah, it has.
It has gotten much colder. It feels a lot more like deer weather in the Ozarks, and we're going to be talking about late season deer hunting today. And I just got to say this: I am not a excellent late season deer hunter. However, what I have heard, and specifically from our guests for this episode, which I'll get to in a second, is that late season hunting is one of the best opportunities to harvest a mature whitetail in the Ozarks. Now, the problem is, just because it's a good opportunity doesn't mean it's easy. And I feel like I'm in that boat right now.
Yeah.
Like, I've been watching my cameras. I feel like everything has changed. The rut has turned off where I'm at. And, you know, of course, I'm hearing conflicting reports on that. But where I'm at, I'm not seeing a whole lot on my cameras. I've not seen a decent buck, you know, outside of like a spike in the last 3 weeks on a place that has been very, very consistent for me. And so thankfully we have our guest here today who you guys have heard from this person before. But we were talking the other day and I was like, man, what would be the best time for you? Like, do you feel like you're most successful in? You're like, actually, now that I think about it, pretty much all of my big bucks have been killed in the late season.
Yeah, most of them.
And you're saying like December, January, right?
December, January, end of December is probably my favorite, but even end of January, like past 2 years, I've killed in January for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it's a great time to kill a big buck.
That's awesome. Well, so if you didn't already recognize that voice, that is our guest. You've heard from him before. We've got Russten Johnson back on the show today.
Yes, sir.
Our guide for the late season.
Our guide for the late season. He's going to take us through everything you need to know. And if you listen, stick with us, apply this, there's a really good chance that you're going to kill a late season buck in the next month and a half, 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
So y'all stick with us. Russten, let me ask you this. What makes the late season so fun for you to like put in the amount of time that you do in the late season and to then have success and, you know, and figuring all this out? Because it's not like, I feel like a lot of people focus so much on the rut that it's like they kind of get burnt out by the time that the late season comes.
Yeah.
So for you, what made you kind of stick in that and want to really figure out the late season?
So the rut is really fun because it's like a circus and it's unpredictable. But as it shifts to late season, that unpredictability becomes extremely predictable. And that's when you can really key in on specific animals and go in and kill them. That the whole shift from the chaos to very predictable based upon them needing to replenish themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You got to take advantage of that. And that's when late season just absolutely sets on fire.
Okay. Gotcha. So when we say late season, for you, in your experience, what are the kind of the parameters of when that starts and when that ends?
So my brain doesn't really turn on for late season until December hits the calendar.
Okay.
Some places, like you were saying, you're not seeing any bucks or whatever. That's when you kind of figure out that late season's starting there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a place that I was hunting tonight, just a few hours ago, that I wouldn't say late season starting because I heard a big old buck grunting and chasing after some does.
Yeah.
So it's kind of variable based upon where you're at, not even just regionally, but property based, square miles. It could be completely different based upon what the does are, if they're bred or not, and stuff like that. But basically by mid-December, everything starts to wind down. I know that there's some rutting activity that could be happening, but most of the times around that mid-December mark is when I would say late season starts. And then by about Christmas time, that is just an absolute really good time to be after those big bucks.
Okay.
And then even in January, if you get really cold snaps and you're into January, if they're not starting to shed, which you got to kind of keep an eye on, the later the better. I think that into January, it just keeps getting really good.
Yeah. Gotcha. What you're saying you're seeing different things. What's kind of the behaviors that you're starting to see in late season 2 that are pretty? I realize every spot's gonna be different, but some generic behaviors that you're gonna see of mature bucks doing different things.
So I don't know if I said it in this podcast or a podcast before, but that early season at that shift when half of them leave and half of them stay around about, the ones that leave, they usually, a lot of them, if they're alive, will kind of come back in the late season. And that's when you can kind of get those big bucks to start showing up on camera. And their behavior changes from reproduction based, and then it switches to sustenance and replenishing their body from that tremendous weight loss and effort that they just went through over the previous month.
Yeah.
Because a deer will drop weight like no one's business. I can show you the same buck from early season on trail camera and then show you his picture in December, and you're like, man, did he go from a 7-year-old to a 2-year-old? And his body is so depleted. So their priorities really change once they feel that the rut is dwindling down or over. Their priorities completely change, and it's all about food, survival, staying in thick cover because all of the leaves are usually gone. So they're going to be in thicker ditches. They're going to be hiding in, I would say, more obvious spots because there's not as many spots to hide in. So you got to take advantage of those. And they just become a lot more predictable, especially if you've got a little bit of history with either the piece of public or the private that you're on.
Yeah.
You said something there that's good news for the guys that had a whole bunch of big deer leave on camera.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like mid-October, right?
Yeah, if
like,
I've
what
got
the
one,
heck
even if
happened?
I've got one that
they could come back.
leaves, yeah, if I've got one that leaves in September or October,
Yeah.
If he doesn't get killed, then I'm expecting. I've even got some bucks in my head right now that I'm expecting to show up in the next 2 weeks, just because I know that their rut's kind of dying down.
Yeah.
And they're going to be coming home, basically. It's like a homecoming, is what the late season is.
That makes sense. And I think about the place that I'm looking at right now. It is a little bit more open. It's a kind of a transition place from really thick cover that's past and it's further and it's on private. And then it's like open and it's food and there's like an ag operation nearby. So it's like in between and they're just not coming through there as open. I feel like where they've gone and where they're at is a lot more obvious. It's a lot thicker back there, and really, I can't get back there, and I don't even know if those guys are hunting it over there. But it just seems like that's kind of their safety corridor.
And something else, the spots might be a lot more obvious, but just because you're like, oh, of course there's a deer in there, it doesn't mean that there are. The deer are spread across the landscape earlier. In the late season, they congregate a lot. These deer, they're social anyway, but in the late season, they really stick together. I don't know if that's, a variety of reasons, maybe warmth, maybe safety, seclusion, whatever, but they really group up. So you're either going to be in them or you're not going to be in them. And your camera might be completely dry for days and days while, the next property over or a mile in one direction, you could have 12 bucks together all in one batch with does too.
Yeah.
Even in the Ozarks.
Absolutely. So the buck I killed in January, I guess it's this year.
Yeah.
Big old buck, like 9 years old, 6-inch bases, huge, big 8-point with 12 inches of extra. When I killed him, I lost count of the amount of bucks coming through at once. And there was another one that I was thinking about shooting, but I really was wanting to hold out for him. That buck came through. I passed him. And then the one I really wanted ended up coming through, and I killed him. But they were sparring in January,
Mm-hmm.
and they were all together, and there were groups of does. I probably saw 20-something, 30-something deer in that sit. And that's when the big snow hit. It was like -2 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was nasty.
That is nasty, but prime
Right.
conditions for getting it done. The nastier and the colder it is, the better it is, because they're going to be more predictable, because it becomes about survival.
Yeah.
And they're gonna make mistakes because they're reaching for what they need to survive. So you can really take advantage of that. And if I see a big snowstorm coming or whatever,
You're getting in the tree.
there's gonna be a buck that
See, that's
hits the
a-
I
ground.
remember the
surprises
picture from
me.
last year, you being like knee deep in snow with the bucks that
Yes.
you killed.
Yes, and the years previous we didn't get a whole lot of snow, but I killed, I think 3 years in a row in January. The year before probably in December. So it's just been like an every year thing.
Yeah.
And in January we've had even like a dusting or whatever. If snow is coming down, I'm starting to smile, because I'm like, yeah, the deer know it's a little harsh, whatever, and they're gonna make the mistakes that are predictable.
Yeah.
Are you getting out there in the morning in the snow or the evening? I mean, are you
Well,
sitting all day?
I'm a madman, so anytime I can, I'll just get a hunt in. I will say, if it's harsh conditions, midday, like noonish, and then evening is the best.
Okay.
I would skip a morning if you had to pick. But if you had to pick like one sit, the last 3.5 to 4 hours of daylight is just going to be money. And then if you have a big weather system coming in, the first hour of like when it starts to snow, that gets them up on their feet. You can really take advantage of that. Any kind of a major weather switch, it doesn't really matter what time of day, they're going to kind of hit like a false panic and like, oh, I gotta feed, or I gotta eat, I gotta move around, find the best shelter within this thicket or whatever.
Right.
It just seems like their brain turns on and it makes them move.
Yeah. That change makes them act differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Man, I'm excited. I'm excited to learn more about this. So talk to me about it. You've already kind of said, if you've already done some scouting, you've already got cameras up, and you know that you've got some good bucks in that area,
Mm-hmm.
and you just haven't been seeing them lately, there's a good chance that they're going to come back.
Oh yeah.
So so stick with that and just know that. But then also too, if you know that, maybe I'll ask this: if you don't have that, and maybe you didn't do a good job of scouting, earlier, and you don't have cameras up in a good spot, where might you start looking on public for, like, if you're just trying to go find a spot to hunt in late season?
Okay.
How are you going to approach that? Because I feel like it gets a little tricky, and
Definitely can be.
yeah.
Yeah. So if you're going out in the woods and stuff, a lot of the sign that you're going to be seeing, it's like, oh, look at all these rubs everywhere.
Yeah.
That really doesn't mean anything.
Right.
3, 4, 5 weeks after that sign's been laid down. So you need to kind of bypass all that. You need to look for fresh tracks, because that's going to tell you that they moved right then. You need to look for hair in beds. That way the wind hadn't blown it, so it's been pretty recent. The best thing you can do, don't be afraid to do it, is go walk and bump deer.
Mm.
You can walk down ridges, into ditches, into whatever you may think that they're grouped up in, and it doesn't matter if you bump them. If they're all grouped up together, there's a reason that they're there. and they're going to come back because the desperation of late season. So if they're feeding on a lot of native browse or whatever, and it's really good and it's holding a lot of deer, they're going to loop back around. Don't be afraid to bump them. So my favorite thing to do is to put some miles down. I would, if I had, 3-4 days to hunt, I would walk up until the third day until I found what I was looking for.
Really?
Yeah. I would not sit in a spot that I didn't know if there was a deer or not. I would rather verify that there's a deer. Now you can do that through trail cameras.
Sure.
But a more like fast way to do it is to just get out there and just burn boot leather.
Yeah.
Find out where the deer are grouped up and then make moves upon that. Now, if you walk down the first 20 minutes that you're walking and you bump 30 deer, like, don't keep walking.
Yeah.
You found it.
You found
That's
a
it.
spot.
Yeah, you hit the buzzer on the slot machine and it went off. I mean, you got to take advantage of it right then. So don't bypass good opportunities because they're going to come up and it's not always going to be what you're expecting. But just know when an opportunity pops up and then take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I like it's kind of like the old saying of, if it's like, if you asked George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or I don't know, some old guy of like chopping down a tree, how would you approach it? He was like, well, if I had 10 hours, I'd spend 9 of the 10 hours sharpening my axe.
Exactly.
And then I would use that last hour to chop,
Yeah.
And you're saying like covering ground, just trying to actually bump deer, spend the time doing that, finding what you're looking for.
That's like my whole philosophy on deer hunting anyways. I think about it 365 days a year.
Yeah.
I don't hunt that much. Like people think I'm in the woods every day. I've still got a full-time job. I'm still, and I'm running a business. I've got 3 kids at home with a wife. I don't hunt as much as you may think I do.
Yeah.
Because I prep, whether it's on OnX, online, or thinking about spots, maybe even taking the long way home one day and driving by a place that I think may hold deer. And if I see them, then I may act on that, ask permission, whatever.
Right.
I'm always thinking about how can I put myself in a better position. And then that's what gets me in the position to have success. It's all about preparation.
Yeah.
90% preparation, and then it's just executing on that preparation.
Yeah. No, I like your style. I remember talking with you about that last year. Just the amount of time you put into your cameras and putting boots on the ground and just like, I won't even go hunt a spot if I don't think there's the kind of deer that I want to go take.
Exactly.
In
and
area.
that's me personally.
Yeah.
I'm after a certain caliber of deer and they don't exist everywhere. But I need some kind of verification that I'm not sitting on nothing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you could sit in a tree and just, it's a ghost town. And it's nice to be out there. And but if I just wanted that, I'd go for a hike. I'm out there to kill a big buck.
Right.
So I got to know that he's there. And that can come through trail camera. That can come through visual. That can come through trying to verify like a tip. Like a guy may say, hey, I saw this giant buck or whatever. And, sometimes that turns out to be a 6-point or whatever.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
A lot of people, they see antlers and they can't really.
They're like, oh, it's huge.
Yeah, exactly. They get something about antlers. There's like a primordial thing within us that like our heart starts to thump and stuff. It's like, oh, he was a giant. But, you gotta kind of cull those out and figure out, reality. But no, I got to figure out that the deer that I want actually exist where I can hunt, and then I can prep based upon that.
Yeah.
And make my little chess moves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's kind of, if you think about that, it's like you feel a little silly thinking about all the times you're like, I'm going to go sit here and hunt here and I'm going to kill a giant. And it's like, well,
and you may.
Have you ever seen a giant there? It's like, well, now that you say that, no. But you're right. It can happen. It's just, it's not super likely necessarily.
And so about a month, actually, no, probably 2 weeks ago, I killed a deer in Kansas.
Yeah.
That was the first buck I've ever killed that I did not know existed before I killed him.
Oh, really?
And that's crazy to think about.
That is
but
crazy.
I'm so like preparation mindset that I run cameras. I do all my homework beforehand to where I know that I'm after a certain deer, and then I go kill them.
Mm-hmm.
In Kansas, they banned trail cameras a couple years ago now. So I went up there completely blind, and that was fun. There was some mystique about it.
Yeah.
But also, I really like knowing what's there.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed my Kansas trip, and that was a lot of fun. Killed a great deer. But my passion is like opening up an SD card or nowadays cell camera and seeing a big old buck come in.
Oh, yeah.
I just get fired up, and then I'm like, okay, now the game can start. And then just 24/7, if there's a certain buck I'm after, I'm thinking about what can I do to put myself in a better situation to get this done.
Yeah, your passion is the whole game. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not just the. Just the hunt.
It's not the thrill of the kill.
Yeah.
It's not the thrill of the, seeing them for 5 minutes and then killing them. I like to really dive in,
Mhm.
figure out the personal things about that deer that I can take advantage of, the whole chess game, and then when it finally comes together, like it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I had never killed a deer that I had seen on camera before.
So the opposite.
Opposite.
Okay.
All of my big deer have been the I like the mystique of it. It's like
Yeah.
I'm gonna roll out into the woods, and it's different. You're talking about you feel silly sitting in a tree just thinking a big buck might come by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say to that, Kyle, is
It
that
worked.
can happen. Well, no, it
worked
can
for
work.
you.
But there's
Yeah, it did,
and
didn't
we've
it?
talked about it just a few weeks ago. There's a special time of the year where that is absolutely possible.
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
no matter what.
Yes,
And
sure.
it's
Yeah.
it is the first opening of rifle.
Yeah.
You have a gun so you can shoot further, and deer are just
Yeah.
being crazy. So you really can just hit a good spot and a buck roll
Yeah.
through. But I'd never done the trail cam thing
Yeah.
or I'd never
It is
I'd
so
never
fun.
experienced it. And then this year I decided to go for it.
Yeah.
And I've had a blast, like truly a blast. I'm in a group text with my dad and brother, sending them videos of deer like
Mhm.
every day. Like, all right, there's this buck and there's this buck. Ooh, a different one showed up. Oh, check this one out. And I can remember a couple weeks before I shot him, I sent them the video of the buck I shot early November with my bow. I was like, all right, the first like mature, good whitetail showed up.
Yeah.
I told him like, this is one I'd take. Everything else I've sent y'all, we should probably let walk.
It's probably pass.
But this
yeah.
one I'd shoot. And then when he shows up on camera a couple weeks later, 2 days in a row on daylight,
Mhm.
that third morning, I'm like, I'm getting out there. And, like, he showed up twice now. There's a pretty good chance he comes through.
Yeah.
And when he came out chasing does, and I could verify that's that deer, it was a different kind of thrill. Like I was like, there he is.
That's the one.
Yeah,
It
it's kind of like
This is wild.
Yeah, you're looking for a certain thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I found it. Like I'm digging for diamonds
Yeah.
or panning for gold, and it's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, I'm actually like able to do it. So
Yeah.
I get that. I'm with you now more than I was this time last year, because this time last year I sat
Yeah,
in this very
no,
spot saying, I don't do cameras.
It is such a passion of mine to run trail cameras. It's unbelievable. But like in Kansas, the mystique was there.
Mhm.
I will tell you when that he was broke up a little bit, so he's probably mid 30s. He might touch 140. I hadn't put a tape on him for sure. But the buck that I killed that come through, he looked like a 150 to 170.
Oh man.
And I shot him at 35 yards. I had him on the video camera for a while. I probably had my eye on him for 5 to 10 seconds before I killed him. And it was so fun. And I cried like a little baby.
No way.
Yes. So I got him falling down.
Yeah.
And you can hear me on the video. It's embarrassing, but I'm going to post it on YouTube anyway.
Heck yeah.
I was like, ooh, just crying because it just, I put so much of myself into being in these situations to be successful that when it does happen, I just get overwhelmed with all kinds of emotions.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing in the world. I'm just eat up with it.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I love hearing stories like that, because you're right. Like there's just it's something that you can't replicate. Like knowing that you've put in the work and the time and the effort and you to an extreme. But with anything in life, it's like when that reward finally pays off and you accomplish your goal, there's just like there's nothing that you can replicate that
Exactly.
gives you that same feeling.
It was like, so I had a real hard time even getting on deer in Kansas. The population is just real low, kind of more open ground. And I was really struggling. And then he came through and it was like weight lifted off, but also like, dude, this is it.
Yeah.
And made it happen. And I was like, oh, I get to come back home to Arkansas, see my kids, see my wife. I've been gone for, I think, 5 days at that point. I hung in that tree all day. I think I was in the parking lot in daylight the first day. And then other than that, I was up and down trees, making moves, playing the chess game. And then it finally came together and it's just all the emotions.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, congrats on that deer. That's fun. I don't know. I mean, I probably saw a picture of it, but I don't think I've.
Yeah, and it was a mess too, because that deer, he didn't go very far, but I was on the edge of a creek, and he tumbled down that creek bank, and I had to like fish him out with a dead stub limb, try to get him up on the bank, and I pulled him up there, and there's a picture of me that I've just got mud caked all over me, and my whole boot was sinking down like quicksand down there in that creek bank. And luckily, I met some guys from Tennessee a few years back hunting Kansas that were also there at the same time. And I called them. I was like, "Hey guys, I'm in a bad situation.
Some help.
Yeah, it's like a 12-foot drop, and I was trying to pull them up with a rope, but those big old Kansas bucks, 250 pounds or whatever. There's no way I was doing it.
Yeah.
And they come and help me get him out, and I'm very grateful for that because it was a mess. But we still got back at like 11 p.m. whatever. It was a hike back there, but that's all the memories that I'll cherish forever.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
All the hard stuff.
Yeah,
hard stuff is definitely worth doing. And then when you accomplish something real hard that you've been working towards, it's something else.
Yeah, we talk about hard stuff all the time. It's like one of the things like bear hunting. The all the hard work and the sweat and the time it takes to get out there and go do these things is like, yeah, it sounds like a lot, but man, when you do it and then it happens and you look back, it's like the part you enjoyed the most is the hardest parts, the struggle of it, and just like being the only one to be willing to go take the time to do that stuff.
Yeah, and like, when you tell the story to friends and family and stuff, it's all that struggle.
Yeah, dude, it's great.
It's not like, hey, I went out there and I did this and I got him.
Yeah,
it's oh man, this spilled all over me and it was a mess.
I was back a mile and I had no help.
Yeah, and then mud caked all over me. And,
well, when it does go super easy, you're a little bit disappointed.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's one of the reasons I really like late season too, because I get to experience the whole season and all the struggle. And then I'm like, all right, here we go. We're gonna dial it up for the late season.
Get it in the very last minute.
Yeah.
Hit the buzzer beater.
Yeah, hitting those buzzer beaters at the end of the game.
Yeah.
You could have the exact same shot at halftime, but it doesn't mean as much as that final buzzer beater.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
So what are some of the late season struggles then? Struggles in hunting it, finding them. What would you say are some of the benefits of the late season, and then some of the maybe potential detriments of the late season?
The benefit and the detriment is that I think is the same thing. It's this, these deers are all grouped up, so you can either have a desert or you can have a feast.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically the worst thing about early or late season, and the best thing about late season, and the worst thing about late season is that they are grouped up.
Yeah.
So, and also if you're hunting in a tree stand, it can get kind of dicey in the late season because all the leaves are off. And if you have 20 deer come in at once, if you think you're gonna draw back your bow, you better think twice because you're gonna get picked off
everywhere.
Yeah. So also one thing I like to do starting right now in December is I'll have blinds set up in spots that I know big groups of deer are coming through.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also run trail cameras to make sure that there's the buck I want coming through there too. But I always keep extra blinds to where I can set them up. They kind of get used to them. and that way, if the deer are coming through, I can come to full draw in that blind, and they won't see a single thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll also keep my windows like take some practice, but only open like 6 inches, so where like I can have 40 deer in front of me and I can still come to full draw, no problem.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you really switch up your style completely then.
Yeah, so I really love a saddle in a lock-on, doing kind of like a hybrid setup,
Mhm.
especially during like the mid-season, the rut.
Mhm.
But early and late, I like getting in a blind. I've had a lot of success in a blind, and it's deadly.
Mhm.
And it also is an incentive if you're like, man, it is cold out there, it is snowing. If you got a roof over your head, then it makes it a lot easier decision to go out there.
A little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're gonna sit up in a blind, are you like on in a ground blind because you're kind of moving a lot?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I don't own any like elevated blinds or anything.
Okay.
It's all ground blinds.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with those, I mean, I know they're holding your scent in a little bit more, but just being on the ground level, you're not. Do you feel like your scent is moving out, or does that ever bust you just by being on the ground like that?
You know what? I've gotten a lot more aggressive with that and not worrying about it as much.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been pretty successful.
Really?
So I think the cold really helps with taming some of that scent.
Mm-hmm.
And then also being in a blind, I think that kind of keeps it enclosed.
Right.
A combination of things. But as far as wind goes, a lot of times it's going to be dead still, or it's going to be like, so unless there's a mild wind in one direction, you obviously don't want your scent blowing towards where you think they're going to come from.
Right.
And you can kind of dial your setup based upon that. But I would not go because you're like, oh, my wind's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Get in the blind, and you would be shocked at what you can get away with.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's late season. Go hunt.
It's late season.
Exactly.
It's one of the best opportunities to kill a big buck.
Yes. Do not let that be an excuse of like, oh, it's not the right wind today, or oh, it's not the right moon phase.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, get out there. Come on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about blind location then for a little bit, because you said that you go ahead and you put stuff out.
Yeah.
I'm also hearing, though, you should walk the ridges for 3 days until you find groups of deer.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those two? Like,
Well,
there's some
That
opportunities
was
where
if you're not like
oh, that's right. If you haven't pre-scouted,
if you haven't already
then-
pre-scouted.
All right.
Yeah.
I take that question back.
But
How do you set up
also,
your blind?
if you've if you've pre-scouted and that information has changed and it's not good anymore,
Then you're moving blind.
then you need to move.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit in a blind
Sure.
on nothing.
Yeah.
If I'm not seeing the deer, then they're not there. Whatever was there that they liked is not there anymore, or they've depleted the resource that they're on. Find the resource that they are using and get that.
Okay, you said something there that I feel like someone's going to be like, that's not true. If you're not seeing the deer, they're not there. There's a lot of guys who are like, man, just because you're not seeing it on a cell camera, on your trail camera, doesn't mean that big buck's not walking right behind that tree.
And I'm all about that.
Okay.
But there are so many other spots that you can verify, so why not? Because if the deer is, let's say, not on your camera, I would actually put more stake into like walking it out and seeing it with your own eyes.
Yeah.
But let's say that they're not on your camera, but then you've got this other camera that there's 15 deer showing up every evening.
Right.
Which one do you think I'm going to go to? I mean, sure, there could be deer walking behind the camera at the one that it's got nothing on it.
Right.
But, you know, if you see the cards down on the table, you play on them.
Yeah.
Okay?
No, I'm totally with you. I just, there's, I feel like it's kind of an old school thing to be like, and I totally believe it and agree with it too, because you don't catch everything on the cell camera, and just because you're seeing one thing doesn't mean that there's not deer walking, 10 feet behind it and
100%.
doing a little bit something different. But it is. I just feel like I hear that quite a bit.
Just like the buck that I saw today. I haven't checked my cameras or anything, but when I saw him, he didn't walk in front of the camera. He was after a doe, and I was hunting right next to a camera.
Mm-hmm.
But you were in a spot with a lot of does.
Yeah, depends on what you call a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably more does than usual, because especially since he was still after some of them. I guess they hadn't been bred yet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But back to blinds.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Because I take back half my question.
Okay.
What are you looking for other than verified deer to set up a blind?
Like what would make me not set up a blind, or like if there's verified deer in a spot, I'm gonna find a spot that a blind works
For sure.
I like if you can tuck it up or camouflage it or whatever, but you absolutely do not have to. I think one of the most important things that you absolutely need to do is tie it down. Don't just stake it down. A lot of times, especially late season, you're not going to have a lot of that cover from the wind on underbrush and stuff. So wind will absolutely demolish a blind, especially if you're on a ridge top. Wind can devastate a blind. So make sure it's staked down and everything, and make sure that you're in the spot that you think that they're going to come through 20 to 30 yards away. And it's also a lot different. I've got spots on private that I'll run a feed pile or whatever in December, and I like to be 21 yards away from it exactly if I can. And I also like to either put it right in front of a log, or I'll even move brush or trash or whatever. Not trash, but I'll move.
Just put a grocery sack
yeah,
right over there.
Just put a big Walmart sack on there. No, I'll get fallen tree branches and stuff, and I'll put it on the far side of the corn or whatever I've got out there, and that way when the deer come in, they're either facing away from me or they're broadside.
Yeah,
because a lot of times a deer will come in and just face you the whole time. And I don't like taking frontal shots. I'll take a quartering shot all day, but the frontal shots I'm not gonna take. It's just too low odds. And if you miss, it's really easy to miss. So I like to put something in front of it that kind of forces them to come around to where they're either broadside or facing away or quartering somehow. I just like to avoid that front on. And then the most important thing I would say about your spot is how you're accessing it, especially on private. If you've got a feed pile out that they've been coming to and are comfortable with, the last thing you want to do is right when it gets dark, get out of your blind and walk straight through where the deer are coming from. I'll even rake out a path to make myself quiet coming in. And I want it to be exactly opposite of where I think the deer are coming from. And I'll go to pretty extreme lengths to make sure that I'm not spooking stuff when I'm accessing. And that goes both ways, in and out.
In and out. Interesting.
Out is probably more important than in. Because you can get away with a little bit coming in. There's coyotes and all kinds of stuff that move throughout the day that a deer could attribute that to the sound while they're bedded.
Sure.
But if they're up on their feet at that last light and they're coming in, and then they see you go out or they hear you go out or whatever, that's a lot more detrimental. So you need to make sure that your access is bulletproof. I will completely move a blind if I think that there's better access. I'll even move a feed pile if that's what I'm doing on private, and make it to where my access is absolutely great. Anything that can shield me walking in, thick brush or whatever, There's some spots that I'll even crawl the last 20 yards. Like I get pretty crazy about them not knowing that I'm there, because
Yeah.
as soon as they do, they're gonna, the old ones, you still have your young does and button bucks and whatever. You can walk out there right in front of them, they'll run away, and then you get in your blind, they'll come right back out. But if I'm talking about a big buck, your access has got to be bulletproof.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you would do the same thing on public too, as if you were doing the same way with private. Is
it's some of the same methods, but you obviously can't have a feed pile or
Right,
anything, or
right.
some destination. So you're looking for those natural destinations. And if the natural destination is too big, I'm looking at what funnels them from and to that natural destination. I'm thinking of one spot right now. There's a little dry creek bed coming through, mountain coming down a big into a big ditch, and then there's one trail that I guarantee you there's big bucks in daylight this coming up January that's going to come through there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because there's so much woody browse down in this bottom that they're not bedding in for whatever reason, but they come through there the last hour of daylight all the time. And those little pinch points are what you really want to focus on.
So you're going to make your access into that spot be the opposite of you want that to be the end of the trail for you, and to not have crossed over or walked through.
Yeah,
that at all.
I don't want to at all get close to where I think that they're bedding.
Yeah.
During the rut, you can get super aggressive because it really doesn't matter. They're going to be swirling like a blender in there anyway. But if you're late season, it may take you a few times going in there, but do not mess it up by going in there more than you have to. Go in there, bump the deer once until you find them, and then sit on them.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure that you're not continually doing it, or they're not going to tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's even better is if you can find a bunch of deer together, set up a trail cam or whatever, leave it alone, and then there's going to be a big buck come through in that group. Wait for him to come and then start accessing it, but make sure you're doing it smart.
Yeah. Let me ask you about so let's say you've got a spot in mind. Maybe you've probably already done some scouting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just go ahead and ask you. For me, like I've hunted this spot. I've taken 2 deer off the spot, a buck and a doe. Like I said, it's been dry. I haven't seen any good bucks in the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's a private spot. Things have dried up, but I know there's good bucks in that area. They've just seemed like they've gone thick into cover. Now looking forward, how do you know when you've if you're over hunting a spot, or if you're boogering them out, or how do you play that game of, for you've maybe found a place that there's a big deer in there and you want to go hunt it, but you don't want to be in there every single day and you don't want to scare him off. How do you play that balance in your playbook?
So I rely on trail cameras for this a lot. I don't think you can overhunt a spot I don't think that you are overhunting a spot if they're still in there in the dark at nighttime.
Okay.
If you're overhunting a spot, they're not going to tolerate the spot regardless.
They'll just be gone.
If they're still in there in the dark, it just means that they're waiting for the right time to come out in daylight, and you don't know exactly when that's going to be. But I don't think you're overhunting it if the deer are still there. Now, if you're absolutely just ghost town and nothing is there, you, number one, could be overhunting it and just stuff is just avoiding it because you are overhunting it, or your access is sloppy. Or it could be a deal where the deer just aren't there.
Yeah.
And there's some spots like that might have been great early or whatever. And for whatever reason, they're just not there anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not because you're overhunting it. There's a spot I'm thinking of right now that I haven't been in a month, and the deer are just not in there. Early season they were,
Right.
but it's not because it's getting overhunted. I know that because I haven't been in there in a month.
Mm.
So there's a lot of variables you can kind of think of, and that's part of the game that you're playing in your head, anyways. Is what are the impacts that I'm actually making? I think of that in the tree stand all the time.
Yeah.
Like, did I do something that caused that? Like a deer comes in, hits the trail that you walked in on, and kind of changes demeanor or whatever. It's like, well, is that a coincidence that like something else happened, or is that because of me?
Yeah.
I'm playing that game in my head all the time. So it really just depends on what you believe. But I mean, if you're trouncing through the woods every day and just beating around and being sloppy with your access, then I would say, yeah, you probably overhunting it and you want to ease up. But if you're being really smart with your access, I've hunted spots days and days in a row, and the deer just are there.
Yeah.
I mean, they just keep coming back. And people are like, oh, you're overhunting it. You're hunting it, 20 days in a month. And I'm like, the deer are still showing up.
Yeah.
So me overhunting it, my footprint that I'm putting down that they're responding to is not big enough for them to feel like it's pressured.
Right.
So it's all about calculated pressure.
Yeah. That makes sense. Didn't your dad say like he'll just sit in the same tree for like 10 days in a row until he kills a big deer?
Yeah. Now, okay. So I can do that and I have done it.
Yeah.
But he has got the patience of like, I don't know. It's like the best in the world.
The best patience of all
yes.
time.
And he also will get there like hour and a half or two before daylight. I was checking my cell cam one morning, starting work, and I'm like, he was in there 2 hours ago, and the sun's still not even up. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, just take a nap, because he believes access is really important too, and he doesn't want to disturb stuff right before they come in.
Right.
I like sleeping.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll roll in there maybe 30 minutes before daylight, but he absolutely, he's a beast. He'll just sit in the same spot forever.
Yeah.
There was one day in Kansas, I think I hung my Ingwe stand probably 9 times in one day.
Yeah.
Because I was up there sitting in my saddle and I was just like, they came through there, would that be a great shot? And this and that. I was like, oh, I'm going to move trees.
I got to move.
And sometimes I would only move 10, 15 yards.
Yeah.
And, but I like everything to be like as much in my favor as possible. So if I'm like, oh, that limb might be in the way, I don't know, I could see a buck coming through here, but hey, if I move over there, it'd be better. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then I do it. My dad, he'll pick a spot and he'll just be like, I'm here. I'm here.
This is me.
Yeah.
My tree.
And he shot one in Kansas too.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious because he took a shot through just like sticks everywhere. Dalton came and helped him. And he's like, what was the tree you were in? Like, there's no shots.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was in that one. And he was like, no way. It's like, he must have shot through like that.
It's like a cedar tree. He's
it's just
climbed up in there.
I'm like, what in the world? Every time he hangs a tree stand and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to go hunt that. I'll get up there and I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to move because I like having shots over cover because I think that me controlling my movements is good enough,
Yeah.
But unless it's late season where a bunch of deer come through, then I like being on the ground in a blind.
Yeah.
But yeah, shots are important to me.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I totally agree. All right, let me ask you this.
Okay.
So we've covered what's going on in late season. We've covered scouting, how to find them, kind of behaviors of everything that's going on, some strategies. If you had to kind of pick like when I don't even really like this question because I'm a big believer in like when you have time to go hunt, go hunt.
Yeah, sure.
But like if you had to narrow down some time, everyone's busy.
Yeah.
right? Like, and people can't just hunt all the time.
Yeah.
And so if you're gonna really like focus in on some specific
Like if
times
you were to
go hunt,
convince your wife, like, hey, I'll go do family stuff here, but I want this block off.
Yeah,
Is
like-
that your question?
yeah, like that, and also times of day, morning versus evening. Kind of, you
Mhm.
mentioned snowstorms and cold fronts and changes and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But along those lines, like some kind of general principles that you've found over the last couple of years of hunting late season where you found success.
So I would say number one, get the last couple hours of the evening if you can.
Mhm.
If you were to pick, are you talking about like days of the month? Or,
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So I would really intensely become best friends with your weatherman or your app or whatever after December 15th. And as soon as that real harsh first event happens, that's when you need to be there.
Okay.
And it changes year to year.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's, Christmas time. Sometimes, it's kind of fair weather until January.
Yeah.
But that first real harsh event is when you need to be hunting. And you can do your scouting right before that. And good thing is we have like extended forecasts when you kind of get a gauge for it. And sometimes it's not always right, but you can really dial in based upon that. If, let's say, hey, it says we're getting 2 inches of snow, 3 inches of snow on Wednesday, I might go Monday, find the spot, and then set up and then be in there Wednesday evening. Even if I have to miss Wednesday morning because of obligations or whatever, make sure you're in there in the evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense.
And harsh weather, you're not talking about this year in the Ozarks harsh weather.
I'm talking about like if
we have November weather in December. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it finally got below 30, which
Yeah.
is so weird.
Yeah.
But
I'm talking
you're
about
talking,
like
like,
if
nasty.
you go out to the car and you're like, oh, I really want to go in and watch football. Go.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that kind of weather.
That's the time.
Like if it hurts you on your face because
Mhm.
it's too cold, yeah, stay there. If it's uncomfortable for you, or if it's wet, if it's snowy, if it's ice, if it's even high wind in the cold, like stuff that you do not really enjoy being out in. Like if you were watching
you'd rather be anywhere else.
yeah, if you were watching a baseball game and you're just like, oh, let's leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when you need
That's
to be
when you
there.
need to be
That's
there.
when you need to be
When
there.
you could not be any more miserable, that's when
yes,
you need to go.
Whenever it is the worst for you, it is the best for hunting.
Okay. So that brings us to your question, Kyle.
Oh, yeah. How the heck do you not freeze to death or just sit there miserable?
Okay, so
What do you do to stay warm? Because
So-
I hate being cold. I've
Yes.
been known to sit in the tree stuffed like a marshmallow. Honestly thinking, if I had to pull my bow back, I don't know if I can through all those
Yeah.
layers.
yeah.
But I'm warm, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
You know what I used to do is just be miserable.
Yeah. Just tough it out.
Because you know what? I like big bucks on the wall more than I like, comfort.
Yeah.
But
All right, make me look bad.
but recently I've kind of smarted up and I've got hot hands are great, but battery powered heated elements. I've got a little battery pack heater, little rectangle deal that you can hold in your hand, and if you keep your hands and your toes and your neck warm, that's about all you need. I've actually sewn in a little pouch on like the top back of whatever undershirt I'm wearing,
Yeah.
and I'll slip in one of those little XL hot hands things, and just right there on the base of your neck, it'll kind of radiate down and keep you warm. The main thing is, don't be piddling on your phone too much. I know it, some people, that's what they got to do to be out there is piddling on the phone.
Mhm.
But if you can keep your hands in your pockets with those little heated elements, that really helps. And then if you're in a blind, I recommend boot blankets. You just slip them over the top of your boot and zip them up, and you would be amazed at the insulation power of those. And it'll keep your toes good. Last year when it was, or this year in January, I keep saying last season, it was -2 degrees, snowing, whatever. I actually used a little propane heater and brought it into the blind, and that was amazing.
Oh, those little buddy heaters?
Yes. And I was like, man, this is like I'm cheating.
Yeah.
Because it is so good. Like, I just put my hands up there, and I was like, oh, man, I'm watching all these deer. I'm like, ooh, this is cozy.
I feel like I'm sitting at the campfire.
Yeah. And then there's some really good, like, little base layer heated vests that have internal components that you can run. There's all kinds of stuff nowadays that's available to keep you comfortable. So there's really no reason to be like, it's too cold.
Yeah.
Because you can make yourself warm
Yeah.
a variety of ways. Even if you're not using battery powered heated stuff, you can still do the wool socks and then put a wool sock with a hand warmer under a sock and slip it on and just have it right up the base of your toe.
Like over the boot.
Yeah. Over the boot. You need good quality clothing, I think. Really heavy duty insulated stuff. Windproof is also good.
Right.
If you're in a blind, it's not as important, but there's a lot of little things that you can do to make yourself more comfortable.
Yeah.
I've even got to a point to where I'll wear just gym shorts and a t-shirt under, and then put my big thick bibs on, and then a jacket, and then heated elements, and that's all I need.
Yeah.
And I've hunted -degree weather in the Ozarks with some wind and everything, and I've been comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the blind too is something that makes a lot of sense for multiple reasons too, with that, because it's holding in heat, it's keeping your scent there, and you can bring in a Mr. Buddy heater with you.
And you know what else? Some people like don't even realize blinds make your access so much better because you're not having to go up a tree.
Mm-hmm.
When there's no leaves or anything on, you know how far you can see when you're up in a tree stand?
Mm-hmm.
Those deer can see even further and see you going up that tree.
Sure. Yeah.
If you're even in the game close on a deer, you're probably within 200 yards where it's bedded or whatever. But there's a lot of places that you can see 200 yards in the woods from top of a tree stand. Now, if you're down on the ground level, you're not seeing that. But you got to think about it. Yeah, your vision is better, but so are the deer that are watching you go up in the tree. And you may have no idea because they're sitting still and stationary, and they're just watching you go up the tree.
Yeah.
And so that blows your access.
Yeah.
When it's earlier in the season, there's leaves on and everything. You can get away with that because you might not be able to see past 40 yards. But late season, when everything's off and it's just trunks and stems, you would be amazed at how many deer will watch someone go up a tree and then just never come in.
Yeah.
Because they're like, yeah, I saw you.
I don't want to go over there.
I don't want to go over there. He's got some sharp, pointy things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So slipping in a blind is wonderful. I think you'll see more deer and you'll be more successful. Now, a lot of people do not shoot their bow out of a blind. The first time might be when they're shooting the deer.
Yeah.
Do not do that.
Okay.
Get your blind set up in your yard, your whatever, because it is so much different shooting sitting down and through a window.
Mm-hmm.
I've hunted out of blind for a long time now, so my windows are super short.
Yeah.
And I can just feed an arrow through there. Basically all I need is from my arrow clearance to get through on the bottom, and then for me to see my sight housing, and that's as big as I open them. But if you're newer to it, don't be afraid to open it up a little more, get comfortable with it, and shoot targets through. Don't shoot through mesh. I'm saying that right now.
Okay.
Keep open windows.
Even if you have a fixed point?
Even it don't matter
Okay.
what you're shooting.
Okay.
Do not shoot through mesh unless you're using a rifle.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
If you're using any kind of a sharp pointy stick, crossbow, bow, longbow, whatever, if it's an arrow, do not shoot through mesh.
Yeah.
It will mess it up.
I'm with you on that.
People shoot through mesh.
People
Oh,
do
yeah.
it all the time.
I used to.
Really?
All the time.
Yeah, it's not a given.
I've never heard of this.
People say that you can and you should too, but
and you can, but it'll mess you up. So don't do it.
And if it doesn't mess you up the first time, it might get you on the second or the third time.
It will, for sure.
It will get you eventually.
It will. So keep your windows just bare open and practice. The slimmer you can get your windows, the better, because you can get away with more movement. But it's just like picking your poundage for your bow. Do not be the He-Man and like, I'll crank it all the way and then not be able to pull it back.
Mm-hmm.
Do with what you're comfortable with, because what you're comfortable with will become your limits in those high stress situations.
Yep.
So don't put it at your limit to begin with, because you sprinkle on a little bit of stress on there.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're past your limit, and then you're freaking out, and then you hit whatever, and it's a disaster. And then the buck that you've been sitting for a week solid, he's like, oh, hi. The arrow went 2 feet over me.
Walks out of your life forever.
Yeah. And also, one of my biggest pet peeves is when someone sets up a blind. If you've got like a regular lawn chair, works great. If you set it up right, do not face your lawn chair like I'm looking at you.
Yeah, like you're watching a movie.
Like you're watching a movie. Don't just sit there like this the whole time and like you're watching a movie. That's not how you shoot a bow.
Right.
When you shoot a bow, look, it's hard for me even to do that. Set it up to where your left shoulder is facing where you think a deer is going to come in.
Yep.
Especially if you're hunting like a feed pile or something, put it just on the inside of your left shoulder. That way you don't have to make any movements. You can just sit there and grab your bow and come to full draw and make it happen. A lot of people sit their chair in there and be watching deer and stuff, and then they have to make the shot, and they're over here moving and this and that, and then the slick chair makes a sound, and
you
the
bump
deer,
the tent.
and the deer runs off, and they're trying to get to the front of the chair, and it's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had all that happen to me when I was 10, 12 years old. Growing up hunting a variety of ways, I've learned a ton of things that you do not want to do.
Yeah.
Just by doing them.
Right.
And being stupid. But I didn't know I was stupid until it happened. Then I learned.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to pass on knowledge so that people avoid those mistakes.
You can accelerate the learning curve a little bit.
Yes. And also, if you're in a blind, try to wear as much black as possible.
Right.
I know that the, snow camo is cool, but if you're wearing white inside of a blind, deer can see that.
Yeah.
So try to black yourself out as much as possible. Do not leave windows open behind you. I know it's tempting because you might hear something behind you, and if you're in a tree stand, you would just be able to look over and see it. But in a blind, just let it be.
Mm-hmm.
They'll come through. Just don't worry about it. I know you might get excited and want to peek through and whatever, but literally, if you are on the other side of that blind and someone opens up a window behind you, it's like a spotlight's on you.
Yeah.
So
you can see everything through.
Yes.
There. Yeah.
If
your
there's
silhouette.
Yes, your silhouette just becomes like the highlight of the day, and every deer will see it. So keep everything behind you just blacked out. I'll even take tape if I'm in a blind where the zippers are kind of loose or whatever, and there's sun coming through there. I'll take tape and just put it over because I want it completely shaded behind me, and you can get away with a ton of movement in a blind.
Yeah.
It's great for taking people to like use and stuff because they can move all they want, and it's great for that.
Yeah.
But if you open up the windows behind you, it's a huge detriment, and they'll pick you off immediately and run.
Yeah.
Seriously. There's a lot of things that make a deer run. You
Yeah.
got to do everything right.
Just about everything makes a deer run.
Yeah. You do one thing right, you do 99 things right, and one thing wrong, they're gone.
Yeah.
So try to do everything right, and then they won't bust out.
Pretty much anything that you can do as a human will make a deer run.
Exactly.
So try not to do any of those things, or at least hide those things.
Yeah, don't do those things.
Yeah. Oh man.
I got to get a blind. I've never hunted out of a blind.
They're so fun. Okay. Imagine big old buck just burled up, coming in on the ground.
Eye level.
20
yards away.
I'm telling you, it's a different experience.
Man, That's cool. I've hunted out of blinds before, but I've never taken a big deer out of a blind.
Oh, I think the majority of mine have been out of a blind.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's real fun.
And that's just because I've not been hunting big deer all that long. That's not to say that it's the blind's fault at all. It sounds like an awesome tool.
Oh, I've had deer. I mean, a blind can be so good that deer can come 5 feet away and just like from me to you.
Yeah.
That's an experience.
Oh, man.
That is
so cool.
so fun. I took my wife when we were dating, and there was a deer that come right up to the blind, and she was over there like, and I was like, well, hold on. It's okay. The deer could definitely sense something was up because they could just hear her teeth chattering. But it's a lot different than when you're just overlooking them.
Yeah.
If you're on the ground with them, like, it's so fun.
Yeah, that is awesome.
So fun. And the deer, you could have one that you decided for sure you're going to pass on trail camera, and then he comes in on the ground. Deer look a lot better.
They look a lot bigger on the ground.
They look a lot better on the ground than they do in a tree stand.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
I believe that.
Yeah.
That's a good point, though, too. It's easier to hunt with somebody. Like, if you wanted to take a youth or just even go as friends, it's like you don't have to climb up the same tree or have 2 trees set up. It's like, let's just go sit on the ground.
Carry less on your back, too. It's kind of nice.
I'll carry my wife in there probably 2 or 3 times a year or so, whenever she wants to go.
Yeah.
And I'll just take her in a blind, and she has a blast.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about being like, oh, don't move, move, you know.
She's reading a book. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't have to be the crazy, insane deer hunter that I am usually in October, November. I'm just like, okay, just relax with me. Just don't make any sounds, and we're going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And she enjoys it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have her up in a tree anyways. It's it's a little bit dangerous if you're not kind of accustomed to it and you're not strapped in just right. And the movement will kill you if all the leaves are off. So, I don't want to get mad at her for itching something on her face or whatever.
Right.
I'd rather just be in a blind and we can just have a good fun time.
Yeah.
A blind is my best friend.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. It sounds like we're both probably going to get blinds.
Yeah, sounds like that's
or at
happening.
least one to start.
Especially late season. It is an awesome tool.
Yeah. Heck yeah. That's cool. Let me ask you one last thing, and then we can kind of start wrapping it up because I think we've covered so much good stuff, man. I feel like
good.
I feel like
feels like we haven't been talking at all because I just love this stuff so much.
Yeah.
That I just like, hey, let's start talking.
Well,
it's
I
like,
can tell
you're
you're legit. Like you've really dialed in a late season approach because you've been doing it and you've had so much success with it. So you're like, I mean, this is just the stuff works. Like you've thought through all this stuff. So let me ask you this. Because I think these questions, I like asking them because I feel like people can learn from them and relate to them. I always kind of like to ask, like, mistakes made and lessons learned hunting the late season that you have come across that you've now, like, documented in your head of, like, I will never do that again, but I did it that one time and I just won't let it happen again.
So a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, like access, I've had sloppy access that has completely ruined me.
Yeah. Any specific stories or any like hunts that went sideways on you because something happened or anything like that?
So I'll tell you, last year at Christmas, my dad has not been blind hunting like almost at all.
Yeah.
And I kind of just took that for granted. So I'll just go ahead and tell you. I had some family obligations that I just unavoidable. It is what it is around Christmas time. And I had a huge buck that was coming in, and I just knew with the weather system that we were getting some snow.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, he's going to come in, but I couldn't go.
Yeah.
So I told my dad, I was like, hey, you need to go. And he was like, are you sure? I know you've been hunting that buck. And I'm like, no, he's going to come in. This might be the only time in the entire year that he's going to come in. Go hunt. He's like, okay. So in true Russten Johnson fashion, he gets there 2 hours before daylight and hunts the entire day. I told him
the whole day.
Yeah. I was like, you only got to be in there the last, 4 hours of daylight. It's fine. He's like, no, if you said I could go hunt that monster, I'm gonna just sit all day. I ain't got nothing better to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you do you. But so he got there, sat all day. I don't even think he saw a deer until 2 hours before dark. And
when you told him he would.
exactly. Well, yeah.
Boy, that's a
great.
long
That's
day.
great.
It's a long
That's a
day.
long day.
Yeah, days are a little bit shorter.
That's true.
So it wasn't grueling, but
Yeah.
it's a pretty long day. But exactly when I said the deer were going to start filing out, they did.
Yeah.
Because I did all my homework. And I developed I call it Boost that I put on top of feed piles.
Okay.
I've been using it for about a year and a half or so, and it's made my feed piles on private like ultra premier compared to like the competition. Because in this certain spot, there's some neighbors that just run straight corn, and I was trying to figure out a way to get the deer to come to me instead of them, but I couldn't afford the $30 a bag crazy feed. So I basically took the technology that I've already got in Branch Boss and used it to develop an additive to corn that supercharges it. I call it Boost, and it just makes it ultra premium feed for the same cost basically as a bag of corn. So I was using that. I knew that all the deer were going to skip all the neighbors' feed and come straight to mine. So
you basically you just mix this stuff straight into it.
Yeah.
And then you spread it out on the ground.
Yeah. So I sell it in 1 pound shakers, and that treats about 4 bags of corn.
Okay.
And the aroma is just unbelievable. And the scent technology that I've got with my Branch Boss company, I basically added that to this powdered solution. It's kind of sweet, kind of salty, but the aroma is what really attracts them.
Okay.
And I've got some different scents and stuff that you can see on the website.
Yeah.
But it works phenomenally. I don't ever put out feed without it now.
Okay.
I put it out, and it makes my stuff the best in the area.
Gotcha.
So back to his hunt. I put that out. All the deer were coming in, and the snow was about to hit. The snow started about noon that day. And then the last 2 hours of daylight, the deer start falling through. There were some good bucks coming through that I told them, I was like, that those are not the big ones. Just stay patient, and the monster will come through. About 45 minutes before dark, he looks over, and it's the biggest buck that he's ever had an encounter with in Arkansas. It's the buck that I'm talking about.
Oh, wow.
It's a giant. And he starts like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. The buck is 25 yards, gets to about 20 yards, and he's like, oh, it's over. It's a slam dunk. He's in a blind that I've set up. I've got the corn pile out there with the Boost on it. The deer's coming straight to it. There's been deer on him for the past hour, but this is the deer. This is the giant.
Yeah.
He's coming in there. My dad starts to put his release onto his hook, and the release won't function. He's like, what in the world? Is it like frozen, or what is it? And for whatever reason, he keeps clicking it. And the deer is on the Boost pile, 20 yards.
Yeah.
Mega giant. And he's fiddling with the release.
Oh, no.
And he's like, oh my goodness, like what's going on? And he's like panicking. He's like, what do I need to do? The deer is just standing there eating broadside 20 yards. And he's just, oh no. So then he finally decides to grab the string with his fingers and pull back and shoot the deer. And he pulls back and holds, and he's like, oh, everything's good. Everything's great. And then he releases, and the arrow just just goes wherever.
Just flies.
And I don't know if it hits part of the blind or if he was just that bad off or what, but he had no experience in the blind in that situation, sitting down, and it costed him a mega giant. This deer is so big, it's just unbelievable. It's crazy.
What happened with the release? Was it
frozen?
I
hate that.
What I do when I'm in a blind is I keep my release flipped down inside of my cuff, and that way it doesn't freeze.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he was doing because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
He called me and I just about cried. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And I was seeing it on the cell cam as it was coming in. But I don't know if it froze up or what, but after that happened, we were fiddling with it and it was working. And I was like, what in the world?
Up. Yeah.
I don't know if it froze up or what, but he had not practiced sitting down, shooting out of a blind with his fingers on a string.
Yeah.
And I think it really cost him.
Yeah.
Because you need to, just in case you forget your release or whatever, you need to be able to shoot fingers on your compound.
Mm-hmm.
Preferably you don't have to, but if there's a giant buck standing at 20 yards, you need to be able to hit.
See, and I have never practiced that because and I justify it because I always strap my release to my bow, and it never leaves my bow.
How often do you change out your release?
Never.
Exactly. And it's a mechanical thing that can fail, right?
True.
And it will fail. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
So even if you've got an extra, I mean, things can happen. You've got two, you got one, you got none. That's the rule. But what if that one is broke or whatever? You got to be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also,
gosh, you're making me paranoid now.
No, it's a good kind of paranoia.
Yeah, it's like
paranoia is preparation. So I'll be thinking of stuff that makes me paranoid about what if this happens or what if that happens, or I'll dream about it, like my arrow falls off or whatever. And that just, every time you think about that, you're more and more prepared. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, same thing happened. Release worked and everything. But my dad, I think it'll be in an episode we got coming out. We've got like 5 episodes like ready to come out because we've been just smacking deer. But early season, we had our first ever velvet hunt, right?
Right.
So this buck that was one of my targets ended up coming into a spot that my dad was hunting. We had a few different spots. My dad was at this one. The buck comes in, velvet hanging everywhere, just beast. He comes in broadside 20 yards on a boost pile. And on the video, I'm like, when are you going to shoot? Like, this deer's dead. Like, he's broadside 20 yards. Shoot him.
Yeah.
And my dad had not. I'm dogging on my dad because he needs to practice more out of a blind.
He's going to listen to this like, dang, Russten.
Yeah, he's like, dang, Russten. He needs to practice more out of a blind because that deer was broadside 20 yards. And another funky thing happened. I think I had the window set for me, the real short ones. And he shot and I don't know where that arrow went either. So he definitely needs.
You think it clipped the blind or something like that?
I don't know.
Arrows hit the feathers hit it.
But what I do know is that he needs to practice more out of a blind.
Yeah.
For sure. Because he is the most lethal person out of a tree stand that I know.
Yeah.
But blind hunting, we talked about all the advantages, all the late season advantages. Make sure you're prepared to take that shot. And don't think just because you've been standing out in the summer, standing up, shooting at a target that you're ready.
Yeah.
Sit in a blind, preferably the blind that you're going to hunt, but before you set it up, and practice uncomfortable shots, going through your motions, making sure that your string doesn't hit the arm of the chair. I've also had that happen, had a bow explode on me.
Yeah.
On a 135-inch 8-point on public. I was going like this, going across, waiting for him to hit an opening, and my string hit the arm of my chair, and my bow just went boom.
Oh.
And I was just like, and
What
that
just
buck
happened?
that buck was just standing there in front of me, like he didn't know what happened. He just heard a loud pop, and it's because I was following him. He was going broadside, about to hit an opening, and my string, I put enough pressure to where the arm of my chair knocked the string off the track, and my bow just exploded.
Oh my gosh.
Arrow clipped in half. I'm lucky I've still got both my eyes.
Yeah.
My arrow chopped in half and like went through the blind, and it was a disaster. And my whole hunt was ruined.
Yeah.
I had to go back to the bow shop and everything. But that was probably the most dramatic like thing that happened to me in a blind that completely messed me up.
Yeah.
Is that. So now every time I draw, I go out in front of the arm of my chair.
Yeah.
And then I kind of sit up.
Okay.
Or I like the chairs without an arm.
I was gonna say, I think you an ideal chair for that in my head would be like a no armrest, maybe even like a kind of a swivel.
You think that my ideal chair, I've got a couple of them because I like blind hunting so much.
Yeah.
Is no arm on the left side, big old arm on the right side.
Okay.
So then I can kind of lean back. I can stay there for a long time. And the arm's comfortable. I can kind of go like this.
Yeah.
But when it's time to make the shot, I can sit up and there's nothing right there in my way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if I take the arm off on the left and then have the arm on the right, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, you need your own little specialized chair to make a shot over your left shoulder, but then also have the features to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And
you're still going to need a right armrest for your hot cocoa and your
maybe if you're into that kind of stuff, you might need your hot cocoa
you got
or
your
little
buddy heater and your hot cocoa.
Exactly. Whatever you need to make yourself go hunt, go do it. Your buddies might make fun of you if you've got your little phone screen right there playing football, but if that keeps you in the woods, like that's fine.
Yeah.
Just be out there, have a good time. You need to make sure that your chair also is not going to make a loud noise when you move.
Right.
Think about all those little things. And if you've got to make a some kind of a move with your chair or your windows or whatever, don't be content with it and just be like, it'll work. When you get there, change it. Make the moves that you know could be a problem before it becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always thinking about all these eventualities that could happen. And there's so many things that's happened in the past. I've probably forgotten 90% of it, but now it just becomes muscle memory of I've got to make sure to move this down just slightly, or I've got to maybe roll up the sack that the blind comes in and put it under this leg of the chair because I need this angle, or all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or even like the tape on the zipper on the back. All these little bitty things, you start getting a little bit paranoid, kind of like a deer is always paranoid.
Right.
You kind of got to dive into that level and kind of become a safe and healthy kind of paranoid into your own, just to kind of take advantage of and get to their level to be successful.
Yeah. I feel like I gotta at least ask, like, what's a good blind to go to, or what's something that you kind of usually use?
The only blind I really love is the Muddy Preview 4.
Okay.
Do not get too small of a blind if you're bow hunting. If you are gun hunting, you can get away with a little dog hut blind or whatever.
Right.
It says it's a 4-man. I'm kind of the size of 2 men. Actually, last year I was like 70 pounds heavier.
You look good, man.
Oh, thank you.
You look like you've been working out a lot.
Yeah, it's running like 4 miles, and it's kind of crazy what doing all that working out can do.
I bet.
Just busting your butt. But anyways, get a blind that's more than big enough to where you can comfortably draw. Set your chair back as far as possible.
Yeah.
Without your elbow hitting the fabric.
Mm-hmm.
That's also something I like.
Yeah.
When I'm in a blind, you should see me position my chair. I'll like move it half an inch and sit down and look around. And then I'll get back up, move it half an inch, sit back down, look around. And I'll do that like 5-6 times until I get it absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, do it all right when you get there. That way, you don't have to do it again. And I'll go to great lengths to keep the chair exactly where it's at.
Mhm.
And I'll like get up really easy and like position my body in little contorted things to get out of the zipper. Because next time I come in, I can just get right back in the chair.
Yeah.
And it's exactly how I need it.
Do you leave your windows open when you're not in the blind?
Yes.
Okay.
Get them set.
Okay.
And don't move them.
Okay.
Unless a snow or rain or whatever has accumulated and moved them.
Okay.
Get them set and leave them open so the deer get used to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff I'm saying is for private land that you can set a blind for a month or 2 and leave it.
Yeah.
But try to change as little as possible.
Okay.
And you don't need to be fiddling with the blinds anyway when you're coming and going.
Yeah.
Just get in there, and there's not going to be, there's not going to be raccoons or whatever in the blind, and you open it up and one gets on your face and whatever. I've never had it happen. It probably will because of my luck. But
now that you've said it, it will happen.
It definitely will, and it's always a fear of mine.
Yeah.
Opening it up and then something's going to jump out and get me because I know it's cozy in there. So eventually a raccoon or something's going to find it, but hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But no. I forgot what we were even talking about.
Get a big enough blind.
Yeah, okay. So get a big enough blind, set your chair back as far as possible to where when you draw back, you're not hitting the fabric.
Yep.
You'd be amazed at how shadows work when you're moving back versus very front. A deer can see a lot if you're all the way up into the window, but if you're sitting back, a deer can't see anything.
Yeah, you got that much more darkness.
It's amazing how just moving back a little bit as far back into the blind will help you.
Mm-hmm.
And that also is a benefit of having a big blind. So my favorite blind is the Muddy Preview 4. The back half of it is blacked out. The front half is mesh all the way around so you can see everything. Even with the windows like this, you can see outside of the walls of the blind. You've seen those, haven't you?
I have. Yeah.
They're great. And there's enough space in there. It says it's a 4-man, but you can hunt 2 comfortably in it. And then
both guys bow hunting.
I mean,
usually you got one guy hunting,
one guy filming.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you wanted to, you could have 2 guys in there with a bow.
Sure.
It's big enough for that.
Yeah.
Especially 2 average size guys would be no problem. It would be kind of a problem with me.
Yeah.
I also like sitting on the left side of the blind more so than the right. And if you're dialing your chair exactly where you want, don't give that up if there's another person in there. Just kind of squish them over to the side. They can deal with it.
Yeah.
You got shots to make.
Yeah.
So if you need to be in a certain spot,
second.
Yes. Yeah. So I might be towards the left, but more centrally located. And then if someone's filming or with me or whatever, like my wife, she'll be squished in a corner, and she might cuddle up on me or whatever. But hey, I got to be in the position. So don't. If you've got more than one person with you, don't get crammed to a side to where you can't make a shot. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
You're the shooter. Make sure you can make the shot.
Yeah.
And make sure that your windows are right. Make sure that all the blacked out stuff is behind you, and that none of the panels that are open are to where something can see you making movement.
Yeah.
But do not get too small of a blind. It will bite you because all those movements that you've got to, and it's a lot of space.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a pretty big dude. That's a lot of space. So you need to make sure to have enough elbow room and enough front room. And I like the extra room to sit back in the shadows. I don't want the deer to know I'm there. I want the first thing that they feel here or whatever to be a sharp pointy stick going through them.
Yeah.
So I like a lot of space. And then, I think also a bigger blind is good if you are doing a really long set and you want to stand up. Because there's times that I've done that to where my back's hurting or whatever, and I'll just stand up for a while and just, but you can't do that if you're in too small of a blind.
Right.
So my favorite blind ever, is that muddy.
Yeah.
The preview 4.
And those muddies, that brand is usually pretty affordable, right? Like,
oh, very affordable.
that stuff is like,
Yeah, it's like $200-$300, not more than that. I don't think.
Yeah.
I just Googled it when you were talking. It's $200 right now.
yeah.
Really?
Yep.
That's a steal. So for $200, you can have what I would consider the ultimate blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
And it's, I mean, it's affordable. It's great. It's got all the features you need. The windows are silent too, so you can kind of go up and down and adjust it how you need without worrying about if the deer hear it or whatever. Preferably you do the windows beforehand and get all that set. But it just everything about that blind, I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
I've done some damage out of those.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Man, it's good to see you. Good to catch up. We appreciate you for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Cool. To our listeners, if you guys enjoyed this episode, send it to somebody and go get out there the late season. This is one of the best times to kill a big buck. You heard it here first from Russten. So we hope you guys liked it, and we will see you on the next one.